Hey everyone, just doing the videos to go, or a video to go through the questions that went up on the page. So the first question was from Paula Ryan, and she was asking about HIIT workouts burning more energy throughout the day. Is that true or a myth or whatever? So like usually in the context that's like HIIT versus cardio or strength training versus cardio, whereby the people would advocate more for the strength training or HIIT because you continue to burn energy during the session but also for the rest of the day. And it's not a myth, it is true. So a good analogy of looking at it is cardio based activity, which is like mainly going to stress like your cardiovascular system, so heart and lungs, is like start and end is like you're burning energy from that point. So it's like someone turning on a light switch. So the energy is being like consumed or burned when the light switch is on, and when it's over it's turned off, and that's it kind of. Whereas HIIT or strength training is more like a fridge or a laptop or something that like even when you've stopped using it, it's still burning energy in the background. So it's still consuming energy even after you've stopped. And the reason for that is like when you do strength training, you're creating micro tears in all of your muscle fibers, and all of those tears need to be repaired and remodeled, and all of that stuff takes energy. So there's all of this background stuff going on to repair you and recuperate from the activity, and it's over a much longer time period, whereas that happens to a lesser effect when people are maybe only doing cardio. So yeah, like it's HIIT or strength training or things that damage the muscle tissues themselves are going to burn more energy throughout the rest of the day. Now, everyone will be different, and we don't place too much emphasis on tracking like how much energy is burned per se, because there's a lot. It's a lot more complicated than that. There's other factors that contribute to that, and oftentimes the differences between things are pretty insignificant. But in terms of like one v the other, that's the reason why we would promote high intensity interval training and promote strength based training, because like you get a bigger caloric burn from that, and just enhance the adaptation really. So second question you'd asked was about fat consumption on the basis of macros, and you were wondering about the percentages. Does it matter day to day? So it doesn't matter. Some people will have like go like this percentage carb, protein, fat or whatever, but that doesn't really. Your percentages can be perfect, but you can be eating too much or too little. So percentages themselves don't really matter. In terms of prioritizing, in terms of like body composition, protein is the most important macronutrient, then it's carbohydrate, and then fat. So technically, if someone's calories are in check, someone's protein is in check, someone's carbs are in check, it doesn't really matter how much fat someone has, technically, in terms of body composition. If they're sticking to good fats and healthy fats and avoiding like the bad, like baked, processed, trans fat sort of stuff, like from heavily processed foods, we can't you technically can't overdo it on fat. Now the reason why fat is given a bad name, or people tend to avoid fat if possible, is because fat has got more than double the amount of calories than carbs and protein. So and fat's like really tasty and highly palatable. So you will have people tend to eat more fat, but technically in theory, like you can't overdo it on fat if the other things are in check. But it's easier for your calories to go higher the more fat you eat. So that's why we wouldn't want people going like crazy high on fat, and that's where like you get into like keto diet and all of that stuff. But so percentages don't really matter. It'd be more like the numbers in terms of like the grams, and that would be like starting with calories, then hitting protein, and then like modifying carb, and then fat kind of makes up the difference a little bit. We don't want to be like too low in fat. We definitely want to have a minimum amount of fat, because that has an effect on like your hormones. But in theory, we can't overdo it either. Karina has asked about dairy-free alternatives from yogurt and stuff like that. Yeah, so I'll generally avoid dairy most of the time. Like I'm not. Some people suffer more than I do if I do have some dairy, but generally we'll not have any dairy in the house. So we'll use ghee in place of butter if we're using it. Almond milk, coconut milk. Always try to make sure you're getting the unsweetened versions as well, because they can often sweeten them up. The only other yogurt I've had, like a dairy-free one, was a Greek. Or no, what was it? A goat's milk yogurt or something, and it wasn't that great. So for me, just avoiding yogurt, I just generally don't really have much yogurt now at all. Or it's just not I've just kind of removed that group. I haven't really found a like for like replacement for it, but there's no issue with having almond milk, coconut milk, and stuff like that. Then Claire has asked, is it a good idea to mix up the foods we go for? Says she's a creature of habit and has the same breakfast lunch during the week. Weight is pretty much the same with no huge drop at all. Wondering if body is too used to what I'm giving it. So as long as like there's not like big massive like, you know, like as long as like there's not big massive gaps in terms of like entire food groups missing or something like that. If you've got a well balanced approach in terms of like you're getting lots of different colors in terms of fruit and veg, then generally like there's no issue at all if you're a creature of habit and you had the same foods constantly. Your body doesn't care. Your body doesn't adjust or adapt to those foods in terms of they don't have any less of an effect or they don't stop doing their job or anything like that. But if it was a case that, like, say for people that like myself that don't have dairy, like I would look at it and say, well, look, maybe you're not going to get enough calcium, so maybe you can supplement with calcium then. Or say a vegan might have lower B12 or iron intake than someone else. Or say if someone has some other dietary choice, there might be an obvious kind of stand-up one. But as long as like if someone doesn't have any massive big gap in terms of like a pretty broad range of foods, there's no difference whatsoever. What's beneficial in that case is if you're a creature of habit and you generally stay the same, it should be very easy to make little changes, or those changes should, like, you should be able to see the difference those changes make if you're really consistent with everything. So yeah, like it might mean just like trimming from one meal, and then like you'd really be able to recognize that it's good to have some consistency, because it's very hard to pinpoint where someone's going right or wrong if they're constantly chopping and changing, and it's very hard to pinpoint weight and progress if like weight is up and down because you've been doing like all sorts of different things. So yeah, I mean, boring works, whatever keeps you consistent and on plan. If it's a case that your weight hasn't moved though, like I watched that weight loss plateau video that I put up before, it's always that in v out and the amount of exercise you do versus the food you take in, and if your weight is staying the same, they're just kind of cancelling each other out. So we can look to increase intensity of exercise or decrease the amount of food that you take in. So yeah, I would look at revisiting that video and having a quick look at them if it's a case that it hasn't moved up much at all. So yeah, any further questions, just pop them in a comment below.